As Josh here with Wired Watch, I have a guest on today, Bryce Takamori with Graphite Construction. We're going to have a conversation about what it takes to get into being a general contractor and what it takes to get into his particular field. So I hope you guys enjoy the conversation. Bryce, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Bryce Takamori with Graphite Construction, and I own a general contracting business, and we do a lot of residential and some light commercial construction, mainly additions, bathroom remodels, kitchen remodels, garages, shops, some new construction. But yeah, we do a little bit of everything. We do some excavation work. Um, Lately, we've been doing red iron steel buildings, which is new to us, but um, kind of a niche here in the valley, which I think is a good avenue.
Yeah, so those red steel buildings, that's kind of an alternative to like a pole building shop, right?
Correct, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and it's basically we order kits and you bolt them together, and there's a lot of work, I guess, more work in the layout of the slab and the anchoring points for these steel columns, but in the end, this price per square foot for me at least has been quite a bit less than a wood like pole barn type building.
okay.
Now they do have their own uses. They are more commercial or ag or storage or shop, where or you can do barn doors out of them, but there's some different things, as far as insulation goes, that is a little bit different on those versus like a pole barn.
Okay.
But we can clear span a lot further. So, you can go up to like, I think 125 feet without having a post in the middle of your building. So you can build large buildings. I mean, we can build them 125 feet wide by, 500 feet long if you wanted.
Okay.
So kind of a cool deal. And definitely has its uses. So I'm still
Yeah.
kind of trying to find where that is, but I mean, I'm just gonna say like $15 to $20 a square foot cheaper for me to build. So,
Yeah, that's a significant price
yeah,
difference. Yeah.
yeah, when you're talking 4,000 square feet or more,
Right.
I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know in the past, like I've used you as a subcontractor for excavation stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, you've done light poles for me, you've set
Mm-hmm.
some light poles. That's what when I kind of go through my phone and I'm looking for people to help me on projects, like you always come to mind on pretty much a little bit of everything, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
how did you get your experience doing the excavation work? So, I mean, I know you guys are general contractors and you're doing remodels, houses, all those builds, but I've primarily used you guys for dirt work and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. Like how have you become, so versed in a big variety of things?
So I guess my career really started with excavation work. My aunt and uncle owned a dirt working company, and they did a lot of underground, so housing developments, and things like that. And then, after the housing market crashed in 2008, kind of went more, all the work was more in civil stuff. So road work, sidewalks, curbs, grade work, bigger underground, mainline sewer treatment plants, things like that. And so when I got in high school, I did a lot of just odd jobs. I did, um, some roofing, some framing, some other things, as a high schooler in the summer times that I had buddies that were doing, right? And so, I did a little bit of that, but once I turned 18, I went straight to work for my aunt and uncle's company, Team Construction over there on the west side. And my first job was like I think it was, sheesh, like 75 lot plat in Squim where I grew up. And so it just kind of worked out where I jumped right in. I think I was on the job for the first week, just putting in silt fence, just pounding T-posts all day long. And, from there, for whatever reason, our pipe layer quit as we started developing this job and digging things in, and I got thrown in the ditch and became it was trained really quickly in how to do grade work and read a laser and lay pipe. Basically, we're doing sewer line, water line, storm line, And from there, it just kind of took off. Every job I was on, it started moving more towards, you end up hopping in a loader, or you hop in, an excavator, or you hop in whatever equipment's there, and you kind of help out when you're not laying pipe. And so after that, I mean, I did that from high school till, sheesh, I was probably 25, so about 7 years, I think, is about how long I was doing that, and we did a ton of different jobs, all along the I-5 corridor. After I was about 20, I moved over to I-5 side or west side, and, worked along I-5, better wages, things like that, Gotta do a lot of cool things over there because over there in the city, things are smaller, so a lot more stockpiling dirt,
Uh-huh.
on site. And so I got to run a lot of equipment there. And that's really where I got my excavation work from, Um, even moving over here, there's not as much underground work. So not as much, site prep and lot clearing in different grades and elevations. Over here in Eastern Washington, it's more just flats. When I moved over here, we did just mainly grade work to prep for asphalt, and so that's where a lot more, um, running, a blade and compaction and doing a lot more just kind of flat work came
Gotcha.
here. And so, yeah, I mean, that was kind of how I got into the dirt work side of things. Um, but I've always been hands-on. I mean, my whole life, I think it's been, from a little kid playing with Legos to building forts to, whatever it was, it's
Yeah,
always been something that I enjoy working with my hands and making something. I'm a builder at heart, whether it's building a project or building my business or building my life, at home. I enjoy the challenge of progression.
absolutely.
And so that's kinda, where my passion lies. I do have other avenues of income, and we're building those out. So, it's just one of those things, I've always enjoyed the challenge. And so, yeah, I don't know if that
Yeah.
completely answers your question, but
Yeah, no, it does. Um, so you started out family business, doing the excavation work,
Mhm,
doing that. You've excavators,
mhm,
backhoes. That's super impressive, and that's all stuff that you just kind of learned on the job, right?
mhm.
Like you didn't go through an apprenticeship, or you didn't go to any trade schools or anything
Nope,
like that, right?
nope, I just showed up to work and freaking worked hard, got opportunities.
Yeah,
I mean, and it wasn't quick, right? Of course, the first year that I was doing it, like, I'm like, "Man, I wish I could be an op."
yeah,
I wanna sit in this seat and be I guess not lazy, but, I wanna do that.
yeah,
But, no, it was years of hard work showing up, getting in the ditch, shoveling, and working hard, and those opportunities came. They weren't quick, and, it's one of those things that I think nowadays everybody like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go join the union and I'm be an operator." But like the most stuff I learned was by watching guys doing it and
yeah,
working hard side by side with them and learning the groundwork first before I got in the equipment. Um,
absolutely.
and so that's I guess one of the biggest things that as far as learning goes is it was slow. It
Yeah.
wasn't quick.
And that's one thing, for the guys and gals that are listening that might be, kind of listening because they're interested in getting the trades. It's a process, and it takes time. It takes time to learn. And you've heard me say it before, but you have to show up all the time. And
Mhm.
it takes years, right?
Yeah.
Like it takes years to get to a point to where you're a journeyman operator, or a journeyman electrician,
Mhm.
or a journeyman carpenter. And kind of the key thing in a lot of these conversations with my other friends and other business owners is it's consistency, and it's showing up for yourself consistently, and being ready to work consistently, and being there, being teachable, having a good attitude. I mean, would you agree with all those things?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And now that I'm an employer, even more so,
Yeah.
because you can really see two sides of the coin. When you're, just working for somebody, I mean, you show up early, you get to work, you work, anywhere from 40 to 80 hours a week. I mean, there was times where I was working 80 hours a week, 7 days a week,
Yeah.
and, you just bust your ass. And, it's not easy, right? There's times where you're like, man, I don't want to get out of bed this morning, but you just do it. And you know, and attitude is a big thing too. As far as being an employer now, I see it a lot. Is guys that want to be there, want to work hard, want to learn. They don't just there's a lot of guys that just show up and want a paycheck.
Percent. Yeah.
And they don't care if they're getting good at anything. They don't care. Like, it seems like if you don't give it to them right away, then there's those guys that are passionate about what they're doing and learning how to do things and progressing and picking up on things. I mean, and those are the guys that make it. Those are the
Yeah.
guys that make it to journeyman level. Those are the guys that make it to being a supervisor. Those are the guys that end up starting their own businesses.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
not the guys that show up and, sometimes late, they show up, have a bad attitude and bring the whole crew down. Like, those are
Yeah.
the guys that just bounce around from job to job and usually end up leaving the trades. They weren't really passionate about it in the first place. They're just chasing money.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I preach to my younger guys that come on is I try to tell them this is a career path. Like, you treat it like a career. And which when I say that, it's like, all the things you just said. You show
Mhm.
up, you want to learn, you're eager to learn, you're
Mhm.
hungry for more knowledge, you're asking questions, versus the guy who's showing up and is just like, hey, I'm here to get paid. Tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah.
If not, like, I'm just gonna get on TikTok and
Stand around.
yeah,
You got to
and
constantly tell them, hey, you need to do that. Like, we've been doing this for a week. Like, you don't know, you need to get to work.
exactly. So, okay, so you did the excavation for, 7, 8 years,
Mm.
all the dirt work. How did you transition from that uh into the general contracting portion of it, building houses and remodels and, all the stuff that we've worked on together?
Yeah, so basically what happened was, for me personally, I ended up moving over to the east side here and and starting a family. So I met my wife, and when she got pregnant with our son Hunter, it was something that in order for me to make good money, I was traveling a lot, I was gone a lot. When she called me to let me know that she was pregnant, I was working over in Morton or Randall area, staying in a hotel during the week. Like, I
Yeah.
would drive back, maybe one night a week, just see her and home on the weekends. But at that point in my life, it's like, okay, well, I've got a kid on the way. Is this really what I want to do? Is it worth the money? And at that point, I think, I think that it was more important to me to start looking for a career path that would allow me to be at baseball games, allow me to take my son to practice, allow me to be home in the evenings and play with him. And so what I did is I actually went back to school. I had been in the civil industry for quite a while at that point. I was like, "Hey, I'll go to school for civil engineering and construction design, and I'll be able to get a job maybe as an engineer or, still be in the industry, but maybe not having to travel, not on site every day." And so I did that. I went back to YVC, and kind of worked some odd jobs in between there, just whatever I could, making minimum wage. Um, After about 3 years, it took me a while to do it because at that point my son had been born. It was, a lot of late nights. It taught me how to work again because, there was times I'd come home, spend time with my son and then, be doing homework till midnight or 1 o'clock, right? It kind of set me up to be a business owner. And so 3 years in, it took me a little longer to get to graduate and to finish that. And I did that. And through that time, I kind of figured out, okay, it's not, I don't think I can sit behind a desk. The last about 2 years of going to school, I ended up working for an electronic home monitoring company. So my father-in-law owned an electronic, and it was a small company. And at that point, when I started there was only one other person working there. And if you don't know what electronic home monitoring is, it's a house arrest.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, they breathalyzer things, not in cars, but on personal. And the court systems use it to monitor people and stuff like that. So the last few years of schooling, I went to work for them because they would work with my schedule. with school because every quarter it's different classes, midday, all kinds of stuff. And that I was about started about a week in, the guy that was working there quit. And so I kind of got thrown on the fire of
Yeah.
like, hey, figure it out, as far as running this little company. And started having to build relationships with lawyers, judges, court systems, different municipalities, city, counties, like, and reaching out and really kind of I was learning how to, and I didn't know how to this.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I really just got thrown into the fire while I was going to school on this. And actually it was kind of cool because I was building this and building these relationships, more white collar stuff I had never done. I wasn't good at really communicating with other, you know, business owners or people. I mean, I was a construction guy. I was on the job site, like I knew how to swear and
Yeah,
and just
absolutely.
bullshit
Yeah.
and, basically not be, somebody that you would send into an office to communicate with somebody. And so this really forced me to kind of learn that. And with the court systems, I would have to, started being able, having to dress nice and go into meet with attorneys and talk to people and meet with these clients that would come in and see me and stuff. And so I learned a lot there actually the last few years of my schooling. I was probably learning more there that I use now than I was in school. But at the time, it was a job. I think I every year I worked there, I doubled the size of the business. So after about 3 years, when I finally quit working there, the company had tripled its size
Nice.
and we had 3 employees. And so it was a learning experience that was a lot of fun. It was, weight wasn't all on my shoulders on owning a business because I didn't own it. I just running it.
Yeah.
And so it was a good stepping stone and a huge learning experience. But when right before I was finishing up school, I had a buddy, I was working this white collar job. I was finishing up school and I had a buddy that was kind of just doing odd jobs. He was in the construction trades just like me, um and he was just kind of doing just whatever he could find, and he didn't really have steady work, right? It was like, oh, I'm doing a job here, I'm doing a job there, yeah, I'm off for a couple weeks, I'm not doing anything. And so I kind of at that point was, we had some project, like I had personal projects going. My father-in-law had some projects going at one of his businesses, and there's just some opportunity there. I'm like, well, hey, I can probably line you up some work, and all because I needed the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can kind of tackle some of these jobs. So we kind of started doing some of these, smaller jobs just by word of mouth. Um, and after a couple of them, I'm like, well, why not market this? I mean, I know enough people now, and I've kind of figured out the business side of things. Like, I'll market it, and you go out there and do the work, and when I can, I'll be out there to help on these jobs. And that's kind of how it started. That, and I was having some work done in my house, not by him, but by somebody else, and it was one of those things where I had the typical contractor experience where, they wouldn't show up when they said they'd show up. I'd take time off work, go home to open doors, and nobody's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'd say, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'm gonna do this," and they wouldn't do it. Or I'd call them and they wouldn't answer the phone. And I'd hired this guy to do some work in my house, and it was so hit and miss. I'm like, this is kind of ridiculous. I'm like, there's got to be there. So putting pieces together, I'm like, dude, there's opportunity here to provide quality services in the valley, and we're able to. And my buddy needed help at the time, kind of working and finding work,
Yeah.
and so I was able to kind of piece things together, and we started slow. And I think our first real job under the company was a garage that, I'd put some ads on Craigslist, Marketplace, whatever, for construction work. I had gone through and set up legally, the businesses myself. I went online, figured out how to do all that.
Yeah.
Secretary of State, L&I, went and got everything. And, we just kind of had enough word of mouth work to kind of start putting together a little bit of steady work. And, he would go work in the evenings, I'd come out help, or in the weekends we'd go tackle a job. And by the time I finished school, I was still doing the stuff at Safety Services, and we had some jobs going, and slowly we were kind of booking out a schedule. I was still working 2 jobs, so I would kind of manage the or the company side from work, and then he would be out doing the work.
Yeah.
And so we were able to do that, and it just kind of slowly progressed to where, about, I don't know, it was probably 6 months after I was done with school. It was like, okay, this is, we're doing this, and I'm working there. My father-in-law actually came and he was like, he's like, hey, you're doing a lot of this work, and you're still working for me. I don't remember how he phrased it, but basically like, hey, shit or get off the pot. You can't work here and do that too. So it's
Yeah.
like, it's kind of and at that time I was like, what am I do? Like, I didn't know if I should take the leap, like my family and my bills and everything else. Like, we didn't really know if it was going to support us at the time,
Yeah.
but, I kind of did I think we cut my hours down to like 20 hours at safety services where I was working. And I started doing this other stuff a little bit more. And it didn't take very long before I was like, okay, yeah, the company's fine with the people that I had hired. I kind of set it up to where itself.
Yeah.
And so I was able to just kind of step away from that at some point, and just start leaning on my company that we were slowly building.
Yeah.
And it didn't start out great, having my buddy doing that stuff. We started as a partnership, or well, kind of, the deal was like, okay, hey, I'll start this company, and I had enough to kind of fund it and buy the tools, and I think I had a truck at the time, so I had enough to get us going.
Yeah.
And I was like, if we're still doing this in a year or two, then I'll give you a 50% partnership in the business. And so I don't even know. He probably stayed for 7, 8 months. We didn't make it to a year. I know
Yeah.
that, and we're in the middle of a job, and things went, to where he, for whatever reason, he decided like this wasn't for him. It wasn't working out,
Yeah.
and we ended up parting ways, mid job. So I had to. I was like, okay, I got to jump out here. Found a guy to hire and went and finished that job they were on. They kind of left it hanging. So that's kind of where it went, and then from there, just putting ads out to hire guys and slowly building up the business. That was in 2018. So, 7, 8 years later, here we are, and it's not been easy,
Yeah.
to get in 7, 8 years. Like, there's been plenty of times where I'm like, dude, this is, I don't even know if this is worth it. There's days where I don't feel like doing it.
Yeah. And that's what, a lot of people don't really see that with a small business owners, kind of the struggles, right?
Mhm.
Like you're never off work. The
Yeah.
phone's always ringing. You're married to it essentially.
Yep.
I feel like, a lot of people, they see, a guy like you, hey, he's driving around in a brand new truck, like
Yeah.
must be just absolutely killing it. Must
Mhm.
be, must be nice. I hear that one,
Yeah.
so many times, but what people don't realize is it's like it never stops, and
No.
there's always, like, for me, I don't know if you feel the same way, but there's always this feeling of like a low level anxiety.
Mhm.
What it is, right? We're too
Mhm.
busy, we can't keep up with the schedule.
Mhm.
I'm fucking nervous,
Mhm.
or like it slows down and you might not have hours for everybody, and like you're anxious about that,
Yeah.
or you're waiting on money to come in so you can pay bills and you're anxious about that. And
Mm.
so, there's, like, I've come to the realization that there's always going to be this level of some anxiety and some, some sort of worry, and it's just constant. It never goes away, right?
It
It's
doesn't.
it's just kind of trying to figure out how to navigate that and how, right?
Mhm.
Um, man, that's an interesting story. So I didn't know that you kind of started off with a partner, went sideways or whatever.
Didn't take very long.
Yeah,
Partnerships, it's tough, and I've considered other partnerships in business, and I just don't see it. There's gotta be somebody that's in charge.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There just can't be. It is hard for 2 people, I think, especially in the trades, to be like, unless you have separate things you're in charge of and your company's big enough to like,
Yeah.
everybody kind of wants to, it's just hard to have two people trying to figure it all out
Yeah, absolutely. It's I
because
mean,
you got to steer in different directions.
yeah, and like, some people have different ideas on how the money should run,
Yep.
right? Like I'm a big saver and I mean, I'll tell you, I have a failed business venture. I tried to do an HVAC division
Hmm.
and it didn't work.
Hmm.
And it I tried to have a partner in it and that was the biggest business mistake I've
Yeah.
ever made.
Yeah.
It was like, one person has this vision and
Hmm.
one person is a saver and one person wants X amount of money in the bank account to
Hmm.
kind of cover costs and cover operating expenses and the other guy doesn't share that vision and
Yeah.
you just if you don't align on a handful of key things, like, it's
Mhm.
just a recipe for just a bad experience.
Yeah.
Like, it really can be. So what are what are the kind of things you look for when you're trying to hire a business? Like, what are some of those key things that you're looking for?
So I think, well, my standards through COVID had to lower quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, all of them did.
Yeah, I think the last, it's been kind of tough since I started my business. But, nowadays my standards for hiring a guy, for one is that he shows up and looks me in the eye and kind of tells me about himself. I'll get a lot of guys reaching out through text or, email is a big one. Like they'll email, go to my website and just say, "Hey, are you hiring?" And I'm like, "Yeah, first of all, yeah, just send a resume into this email address." Half of them don't. So that's the first step.
Yeah.
It's like taking the initiative to show me that you want it.
Yeah.
And then two is to call. A lot of times I'll just look at them and then I'll wait to see if they call and follow up. I want them to want to work, not like, oh, they're just looking for jobs they have to work.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then if they do, then I'll set up an appointment with them to meet with them. And, a lot of times I haven't found a guy who's been very honest with me about what their capabilities are.
Yeah.
It just everybody says they're an expert at everything. So unfortunately, I automatically kind of just assume that, I'll take what they tell me they're capable of kind of with a grain of salt. And
Yeah.
I'll say, okay, well, this is, I'll try to start them kind of at the lower end of what I think they're worth, but really I just give them a shot. And I'm like, okay, show up Monday if I need people, like show up Monday and we'll see how you do. And, most of them, I've had guys don't even show up on the first day. Like they're like, yeah, we're working. And then they no show, no call, or they'll
Yeah.
show. One guy showed up for an hour and called me and was like, hey, I got a doctor's appointment. I got to go. And then left and never showed up again.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? What did these guys think they were going to be doing? And so then after that, I mean, it's really about showing up early, showing up at the bare minimum on time and being ready to work. But then showing me what you got. I've kind of gone away from the whole talking about what you can do and show me what you can do. And I tell all my guys, I'll start them at X amount, and then after about 90 days, I tell them we'll review it in about 90 days, and we'll see if you make it there.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm willing to renegotiate kind of your wages and what you're worth. And because I got to see it. And so, yeah, I mean, minimum is showing up, but, showing me what you got. And there's not very many people that can do a little bit of everything. We do a lot of start to finish stuff. So whether it's grade work, concrete work, roofing, siding, windows, doors, interior finishes, drywall work,
Right.
finish work. So trim work, cabinetry, sometimes, countertops. It's a little bit of everything, really. There's not, and that's just on the residential side. Other side of things, steel framing is completely different, and so, I kind of try to hopefully get them in that 90 days to show me a little bit of everything. Hopefully, they're on a little bit smaller job where they can kind of, be involved with a little bit of that stuff
Yeah.
before the 90 days is up. But I can usually tell within the first week. By the end of the first week, attitude is a big one. Like if you're showing up and you're willing and you're getting along with everybody and you're like, pushing, want to stay busy, what's next, things like that for the new guys,
Right.
the green guys. That's that mainly the drive, the attitude, and then, being reliable are the three things that I probably look for in guys that I think that maybe I can train. As far as the guys that have a little bit of experience, those guys, they're gonna have to show up and show me what they got. They're gonna have to be efficient in what they do, not just okay. It took me a whole day to do something that should have taken me 4 hours,
Right.
right? So I know there's a transition period where kind of figuring out okay where the tools are at, how we do things, getting along with the guys, where your spot is on the crew. After a couple weeks, like you kinda got that stuff figured out, like,
Yeah.
or
You should be falling into the
yeah,
groove of things, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So are you being
Yeah.
efficient, right? Like, is the way that you're set up to cut and install taking you too much time?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Are you really that efficient with using tools?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of guys that have 5 years experience that really aren't that good.
Yeah.
They kinda understand the process, but they've never taken the time to go through and actually get good at what they're doing. They're just showing up and doing it. It's just a job. So I don't know. The experienced guys, mainly, good attitude, obviously all the main things that, green guy would need, but the experienced guys should be able to communicate well. If they think they're ever going to run a crew for me,
Yeah.
they should be able to, express concerns with me and allow me to, walk them through the way that we do things. They should be efficient in, the way that they're installing things and their how to use tools. And other than that, just a good attitude is really the big thing.
Yeah.
So,
It's so big. I mean, having a good attitude and being coachable, right?
yeah.
Being able to have a meaningful conversation with an employee
Mm.
and talk about the good stuff, but talk about the stuff that needs improvement and being able to kind of take that criticism and
Yeah.
actually do something with it, right?
Yeah.
It's huge, man. It's huge to just be coachable.
Yeah. Because as business owners, the
Yeah.
last things that we need is to be dealing with somebody's personal stuff or bad attitudes. I mean, we've got enough to do with running the business, you know, planning for the next project so that you have work to go to and it's ready to go,
Yeah.
you know, dealing with customers, and everything else that comes along with it, like estimating, like, last thing I need is somebody calling me just complaining because they're not getting along with somebody or,
Right.
or,
Right.
or that they're not guys are my main guys are complaining like, dude, it just, it's a big deal. So, the more efficient and self-sufficient you are and good at what you do, the easier it makes it on the business owner,
Yeah.
which is a kind of a different perspective than being an employee. I remember being that employee where it was like, showing up, man, I'm working hard, I'm showing up early, like I'm giving all my hours and and making not very much and like but, like, that's part of being an employee. Like, back then,
Yeah.
I remember thinking that stuff, but I continued to show up and I continued to learn,
Yeah.
right? And you continue to get better, and your employer will see that. Like, I see it when guys are making progress. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? And I'm the first one to wanna give them a raise. Like, it's like, dude, these guys are awesome and they're killing it. Like, oh, so and so is it needs a $2, $3 raise this year. Like, and I'm not afraid to give it,
Yeah.
but they gotta produce.
Yeah, and they gotta bring value, right? And
Mhm.
so, it's like I tell guys all the time, like, "Hey, if you want more money, bring more value."
Yeah.
And we can easily have that conversation. I mean, if you come to me and say, "Hey, I'm doing XYZ and I've gotten this certification or I'm bringing this to the table that I wasn't bringing it 6 months ago,"
Yeah.
we can 100% have an honest conversation about money.
Yeah.
Like, I would much rather have that conversation with an employee than have an employee come in and just say, "Hey, I'm bouncing because your competitor is gonna give me a $2 raise."
Yeah.
Like, if we can have that conversation and talk through the reasoning, and if you can say, "Hey, I'm bringing more value and I'm doing
Mhm.
XYZ," it's an easy conversation to say, "Yeah, man, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Here's your raise, like, let's go." But if it's not, it then you gotta be willing to have the conversation as well and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, like, maybe we could do XYZ and get to that point, but like, here's a game plan for you to get to that point.
Yeah. And there's been times where I have, same deal, like I have to do that. And it's like, here, this is what you're struggling with. I'll tell them straight up, like,
Yeah.
hey, you haven't been, every week you're late at least a day, you know,
Yeah.
or, you've made mistakes on every job that you've been on lately. Like, or your head's not in the game because you're thinking about your personal problem.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you're taking, too long to do these things. And, and it's not out of just like pure like dollar signs that I think that way. Like it's like, no, I've been there and I've done it, and I know how long this stuff takes, and I can see that it's not being done efficiently.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
and nobody will ever do it as fast or as efficiently as I will because it's my business, and I have a little bit more drive to do so.
Right.
But, understanding that like the people that want to grow in a company, they have to start to take a little bit of pride in what they're doing. They have to take accountability and they got to start pushing themselves to be better for that company.
Absolutely.
And I'm more than willing to, take care of my guys. Like if there's a guy that wants to step up and get into estimation, like or get into something else or move up in the company, like I tell my guys, like there's room to grow here.
Yeah.
Just show me that you can do it. And but it kind of starts with taking accountability for what you're doing day to day.
100%.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that statement. So let's circle back to kind of that time in your life when you decided to make that jump out on your own.
mhm.
Did you, I mean, you kind of walked me through that, but was there like a was there like a pivotal moment where, or was it just kind of like something, it kind of sounded like it was something you just kind of fell into, really?
Yeah, I did go slow. I was kinda dipping my toe in the pond first, right?
Yeah.
Before I jumped all in, and I felt like I had to. It was the smartest way, for me to do it with having a young family and a young wife. Like, we had bills and then sure they were gonna be paid. So
Right.
I didn't fully just jump out and do it, but,
But you thought all those things through
oh,
though.
yeah.
Yeah, you were like, "Okay, I'm gonna work X amount of time
Yeah.
for my employer while I get this thing going."
Yep.
Like you laid out a pretty
I started slow, yeah,
a slow, safe
Yep,
plan.
yep, and, yeah, that's exactly what I did, and I couldn't have done it any other way. It just worked out, I mean, and, I don't know, things just kind of fell in place,
Yeah,
and I think that
yeah,
was, due to just having faith that, I was gonna end up where I needed to be. So, yeah, it wasn't like I jumped in, I think, I don't know if there was a pivotal moment, but I knew as soon as my father-in-law had that talk with me, like, "Hey, what are you gonna do?" Like, I knew that I was gonna have to decide.
y
There was for a while there, like, I didn't even take a paycheck from my company, like, quite a while,
yeah,
because I just rolled it back in. I didn't
yeah.
have to. I was still working.
Just kinda taking draws as you needed it
I didn't even
to.
take draws for probably at least the first year.
Yeah,
It was buying tools, putting it into insurance, like put it in the savings accounts, like
yeah,
buying materials, like building up, the company.
right.
And even after that, it was quite a while before I really paid myself fair.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah, I didn't start taking a steady salary, like a steady paycheck out
Mhm.
of my company until year 5.
Yeah.
And so and that's another part of, like, entrepreneurship and business ownership that people don't understand. It's not instant,
Mm-mm.
it takes years to get these things to a point to where, like, you're actually pulling a steady paycheck out of it, or you have some extra money for investments.
Mhm.
And and kinda what I want the listeners to kinda hear with your story is, it's like, if you make a plan, and that could be a 2-year plan, that could be a
Mhm.
12-month plan, that could be a 5-year plan. But if you make a plan and you write it down, you put it on your vision board, and then if you can go out and execute that plan, you can get a business off the ground, right? Like, you can work 30 hours a week at your regular job and work on your business in the evenings, but it really comes down to how much you're willing to sacrifice, right?
Yep.
Like, how bad do you want it? do you want to put in an extra 50, 60, 70 hours on top of the job that you're doing to pay
Mm,
your bills, right? It's full of sacrifices, and it really comes down to like how bad you want it and how hard you're willing to work for it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. And speaking of that, I mean, really, you can't start a business if you're not good at managing money.
God, 100%.
Like
Yeah.
you have to have a personal, if you can't budget your personal expenses, like me and my wife were making, maybe $18 an hour each.
Yeah.
When I started this and maybe even less, I was probably making minimum wage when I was going to school, and so we really had to learn how to budget and manage while raising a young, child. And, you know, I think we bought our first house out when we were making that much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, I mean, without that, I mean, we did the Dave Ramsey stuff and, kind of learned how to budget our money that way. And, we still were able to take vacation. Like we still lived just fine,
Yeah.
making minimum wage basically,
Yeah.
and so, but yeah, going into business, once we got into business, we didn't change what we paid ourselves for a long time,
Yeah.
and I mean, I still don't pay myself as much as I could. Like,
Yeah.
I'm paying myself enough to just kind of be comfortable and everything else I invest,
Absolutely.
at some point, like you can only have so much stuff, like, you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
benefits of owning a business, right? Like your business expenses, like you can have your own business, new truck. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
can have your insurance, your phone, like it starts to where it starts to cover some of those other expenses that you would otherwise personally cover.
Absolutely.
Right, and so
Yeah.
as you start, like, leaning on your business, if you do start a business, that's where you wanna start, and don't go out and buy a brand new truck, buy one you can afford, and keep saving that money and investing it in the business. Buy the tools you need, buy nice tools, I don't whatever,
Absolutely. Yeah.
buy a nice trailer, buy the dump trailer instead of renting it, buy whatever it is that you might need to run that business,
Yeah.
and wait until the end. My truck was I had my truck before I started my business, but, it was a beat up truck that got my mother-in-law at the time was the sales manager down at Toyota and got in this beat up 1-ton truck that I got a good deal on, like 30 grand or something. And I had bought that while I was going to school.
Yeah.
And so I ended up paying that off and I had that truck for quite a while before I bought a new truck.
Y-
My truck now is a 22 and I went from my old truck into my new truck. So I was in business 4 years before I even got my truck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, if you can't budget money, you're not going to run a business. There's some people have the ability to, be really good at what they do at in the trades. And a lot of those guys go out and try to and start their own business, right?
Yep.
Because they are good at what they do. A lot of us, some of them make it, some of them don't, because the other side of it is when you run a business, it's a whole nother job. You're marketing, you're budgeting, you're, setting up systems for your businesses, you're managing employees, you're
Mhm.
now HR, like you're
Yeah.
doing your and receivable, like
Yeah.
you start having to think about taxes and how, money affects you when you come in. Like I tell everybody, if you're going to start a business, here's probably my number one tip: start a tax account. And every deposit you bring in, every check that you deposit in your account, transfer minimum 10% into that tax account and don't touch it, because a lot of businesses fail by end of year. They don't know how much taxes they owe,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and
When you do start that business, I mean, you don't realize how many hats you have to
oh
wear
yeah,
and how many hats you have to learn to wear.
yeah.
I mean, I started WattSmart, and I mean, the first thing I did on advice from one of my mentors was I hired an accountant,
Mhm.
and I said, okay, like, give me the rundown, like what's the basic stuff? And the first thing he said was you need to start saving money.
Yep.
And when you take big chunks of money, don't spend it
Mm,
because it's not yours.
yeah.
And people don't realize that. And what I mean is, and kind of the other thing before I dive into that is you got to have some credit of some sort, right?
Mhm,
You got to have some accounts open. If you're buying electrical parts, you need to have, some accounts open at different places. But
mhm.
um you're getting parts and you're getting materials for the month, right? And if you have accounts, you're not paying for that right away.
Mm.
And then at the end of the month, you get that big statement. Well, hopefully at the end of the month, you're getting big checks too, right?
Yeah.
So what happens with a lot of these guys that jump out on their own is they're not used to seeing, these bigger hits of money, right?
Mhm.
Like a 9 to 5 paycheck guy, he's used to making his, call it round numbers, is $4,000 a month, right?
Mhm.
Well, you start contracting and you start taking payments for jobs. Maybe you get a $10,000 check.
Mhm.
Maybe you get a $20,000 check when you get done with the job. Well, you have to remember, you got to pay your gas bill. You got to pay your insurance. You got to pay your vendors. If you don't pay your vendors, you're getting cut off.
Mm.
And so what I
Mhm.
see a lot of guys do is they get into these financial situations because they're not used to seeing these big hits of money, right? They get a big hit of money and it's like, man, I've never cashed a $30,000 check.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
New snowmobile.
I'm going to go buy a new snowmobile, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, man, dude, like it just doesn't work like that.
Mhm.
Once you're well established and you got $100,000 in the bank that you're playing with, that's your operating money, then if you can afford it, go buy a toy,
Yeah.
right? But don't do that right out of the gate.
Yeah. Savings and save tax money, and then also savings for the slow times. That's
Yeah,
another big one, is like, I'm telling people, I've watched other guys start business. I'm like, hey, don't spend any of it. Just save it for the first year. Like,
absolutely.
just work hard, get your paycheck. If you can pay yourself what you were making before you started the business, just do that. Whatever the minimum you need to live is. Buy your tools. You have your, you can have expenses, but save as much as you can so you have that cushion,
Yeah,
because taxes are only one side, obviously, of that. Where, like, okay, at the end of the year, taxes, or quarterly, taxes, or eventually monthly, you're paying taxes,
yep,
right? And so a good accountant obviously will keep you on track with that. A lot of people try to do it with QuickBooks, and it's like, dude, why? You don't want to deal with it. Like, pay an accountant.
100%,
Like, you've got a
100%.
business to run. Like, just
Yeah,
pay an accountant and they can do it all. Um, but then that savings, because a lot of guys don't realize, like, come wintertime, like when you're new, especially, like, for at least what I was doing, right? And what I do, like, it slows down. When it snows, you're not out building new houses.
right.
Typically, you might, after you're established and you've got people waiting on you to build things for them,
Yeah,
but you might get a bathroom remodel. You know what I mean? And so it's like that's where that savings will carry you through. Every year I save up, and even now, I still put away a bunch of money for wintertime, and that
100%.
carries you through. And that way, at the end of at beginning of spring, if you have some left over, then great, go buy that truck, go buy that
Yeah,
van. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, invest it back in your company, and you've got all summer to start paying that down and saving up again.
yep.
Like, you got to kind of plan for that. So yeah, I agree with the big checks, like, your first $30,000 check or $100,000 check, like, it's exciting, but it's just it's cash flow is what they call it. And
Yeah,
the more you learn about business, like, it just comes through your company. Very little of it sticks.
100%.
Very
Yeah,
little of it sticks.
yeah,
Yeah, you could do $1 million in business a year, and you might only have 10% stick or less sometimes,
yeah,
depending on what you're doing. Like,
yeah,
and you get to make those calls by, like, okay, are you investing in your company? Like, are you buying a new truck? That's an expense. Are you buying a new trailer? Are you buying new tools? Like, are you getting a new office? Are you going to buy office equipment? Like, are you going to lease this space? Like, those are all business expenses. So, by how much you spend a year, well, I guess determine how much you have in the end of the year,
absolutely.
but,
Yeah,
you know, when you're starting out, I mean, save as much as you can. That's
yeah,
huge.
it's crucial.
You won't make it if you don't,
Yeah, it's crucial. Yeah,
you
and
know?
that's something that is slept on by so many people,
Mhm.
it's like they get going and they don't have a plan,
Mhm.
right? It's like, "Hey, I got this business off the ground. I'm
Yeah.
up and running." And then from there, you have a whole 'nother set of things that you have to plan
Oh,
out.
yeah.
And I think that's why the fail rate for a lot of small businesses is so big.
Mhm.
The mismanagement of money and the lack of having a plan in place,
Yep.
right? Like you said, you have to plan for the slow times. Like with contracting, especially when you're starting out, you're gonna have slow times.
Mhm.
I mean, when I first started out, I was by myself and when I got slow, I had relationships with past employers that they would bring me on as a subcontractor.
Yeah.
So, I was billing my shop rate to help them run projects, but I was thinking outside of the box to kinda
Mhm.
keep things moving for myself, right? It was like, I had started, I had gained some traction, things got slow, and, I humbled myself, I started making calls. And before you knew it, I picked up a month of work to kinda carry me through. You gotta be creative, you gotta be resourceful, and until you have, a chunk of money saved up for those slow times, you gotta be ready to pivot.
Yeah, and especially with a new business when you're the only one doing it, or there's one or two of you, like you got to realize you're not getting paid when you're doing estimates.
Uh,
You're only getting paid when you're completing work, and so estimates, office work, figuring out taxes, like all those hours after hours, not getting paid for that stuff. And
yeah,
if you're doing it during the day, business hours, then you
you're
know
missing out on billable
yeah, you're
hours.
missing out on billable hours. So, it's either yeah, it's gonna be a grind. I
Yeah,
mean, it just
yeah,
really is. And I mean, with schooling, it kind of got me prepared for it. And then, so I was able to kind of be ready, like, okay, I can work midnight or 1 o'clock and get up just fine, like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
still spend time with my family. And yeah, there's been sacrifices where I haven't even got to spend as much time with my family, but at the end of the day, my family, I think, has a better life because of it. Right.
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
we're able to give my kids more opportunity.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
no, it's definitely a grind to run businesses and start them up. I don't think you ever quit learning. I mean, you can always continue to grow a business and scale it. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, there's humps we were talking about before,
yeah,
about like even at this point where I'm at 7, 8 years in, like, there's still a hump that I'm trying to get over with administrative staffing and making it justifiable to have a bunch more people in the office
yeah,
in order to complete more work. But, when we're starting that, it's not necessarily profitable.
yeah,
So I'm still
yeah,
sacrificing at times in order to start to build and look further down the road
absolutely.
at what I'm going to be
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah, and those plans are ever evolving, right? You
Mhm.
have, as a business owner, you're kind of a visionary person, right? And
Mhm.
so you're laying out a vision of where you want that business to go, and then you have to put a plan in place to execute it. Now, executing that plan costs money, right? Like you're paying for people to come on, you're paying for a salesperson, you're paying for an office admin person in order to
Mhm.
grow that business.
Yep.
Well, in order to do that, you gotta have the billable hours
Yeah.
to help you sustain it
Or the savings.
or the
Yeah.
savings. Yeah,
Because what it costs money no matter what.
exactly. So it's I mean, it's it's a tricky thing to navigate through, but, like, for me, it's what it keeps me excited, right? Like, I talk
Mhm.
about this low level anxiety that I always kinda have hanging around because of this business, but the reality of it it's kinda what makes my gears grind.
Yeah.
It's like, for me, like, planning it out, executing it, leading the team, like, leading a group of men,
Mhm. Yeah, and when you succeed, there's nothing better.
oh, there's nothing better,
Yeah.
you know?
Than a plan coming together and executing it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's what we live for.
absolutely.
But then it's always what's next?
Yeah, yeah,
You gotta keep going. So, yeah,
yeah,
you have to have that drive.
you have to.
And
Yeah,
that's kinda even as an employee, like, that's what I look for is people with that drive to, "Okay, what's next?"
yeah,
And those are the guys that are probably gonna grow into a position where they could start their own business,
right,
or they're gonna be a huge asset for the company, and we can take care of them well.
right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's exactly it.
absolutely. Right on, man. Like, one of the other things we kinda have a mutual interest in real estate. As you built your business and you've had, some success and some extra funds, tell me about about your real estate stuff, man. Like you kind of look to invest some of your money in properties,
Yep.
and is your goal with that is to have some rentals and kind of some stuff for that next phase of life, like when you're out of contracting? Is that kind of your goal with that stuff?
Yeah, so I guess I've always been a dreamer, and I think that, working in construction, I didn't have a retirement plan,
Yeah,
for until recently actually. But, my dream was always to try to figure out how to buy a property a year so that 30 years when I retire, I could sell a property a year,
Yeah.
and that was just kind of like a vague, just kind of out there idea, and as of recently, I guess where it started with real estate for me is that we ended up, we've been living out in the same house that we bought back when my son was born, and there we've always looked for a little more land. And so a property came up for sale down the road from our house, and we were actually able to leverage more of that the house that we had bought in order to get that than I was able to. Like, I didn't have the savings to buy it outright.
Yeah.
Like, I had a chunk that I did put down on it, but the property that we bought first was we got a HELOC on our existing house.
Yeah.
And between the savings I had and the HELOC, like, we purchased it. And owning a construction company, it just so happens that when times are slow and I have that savings, I'm able to put my guys to work out at my house.
Right.
So it kind of works out hand in hand, especially when you own a construction company, right? And so slow times in the winter, okay, well, let's go out for a week and do this
Yeah.
till the next job. You know what I mean? And so we've been working on that property for 3 years now, and we finally finish it up, refinance it. Now we're doing a big addition there before we move down there.
Yeah.
But in that time, so that was our first property besides our primary residence that we purchased. And it worked out great. But the now what we're looking at is, since then my wife has been able to purchase her company. And my company is cash flowed and done well enough now that we have had some more savings, and we were able to purchase our first duplex probably 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was a fixer upper again, right? So I don't think there's very many good deals out there right now unless you're willing to,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not going to buy it and it's going to be ready. Like, anything you're going to get that's a good deal, you're going to have to grind to find it for one. They're out there. But it's going to need work.
Absolutely.
And if
Yeah.
you're not willing to put the work in, or, you can't just pay people to do this, because if I was to hire people to fix up that duplex,
It doesn't pencil.
it doesn't pencil at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to, again, back to budgeting, like, you got to understand a little bit more about finances before you jump into real estate. But yeah, so that was the first one. And then we were able to jump in there, fix it up. We had enough savings to purchase that, fix it up, refinance it, get our money back out of it. And then now it's more just kind of a snowball. We kind of keep moving that money into different things
Yeah.
and purchasing more.
Yeah.
And so, and now we're at a point in our life, we both make good money, we both own our businesses, and it's a little easier for us to do. But at
Right.
first, it was like, my wife didn't want to buy our first one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She didn't want to buy it at all. She's like, dude, and I'm like, if I can make it work, we're gonna do it. And so I'm figuring out how
Yeah.
the best way to make this thing work is, and we were able to make it. I was talking to her not that long ago, and she's like, yeah, that didn't look like a good thing to do at the time, but
Yeah.
looking back, like, we took the risk and it was calculated enough that the reward was there.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we were able to purchase it. I think our first one we purchased for 140, and slowly over a couple years we put money into it, and fixed it up, and then it was like, all like, we invested in ourselves.
Yeah.
And we were able to get it back, pay off the HELOC, still have a large chunk of money to do the addition.
Right.
Into it, and then when we're done with the addition, I mean, it should double in value, like,
Yeah.
easily double in value.
Yeah.
So we're putting money where it's smart. We're not just going out and spending it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We continue to invest it back into that real estate, just kind of like I invested my money back into my business. You put the money where it's going to make you money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so the reason I bring this up is I want some of these trade guys that are tuning in to kind of understand that, you can get into a house, right? Like, your first house, you can buy a fixer upper, right? Like if you're looking for a deal and you're a handy guy, You know how to do a little bit of things. You can figure some shit out by hopping on YouTube. You can get into a house, right? You can live in it for a couple years. You can make improvements. You can gain some real equity by doing these improvements. Pretty soon, you sell it 3 years later, you could easily have $100,000 in equity. I mean, the first house that I bought, in 2010, we lived in for 5 years. Rented it for a couple years. Long story short, when I sold it, made about 180 grand.
Yeah.
And so, when you have that kind of money, you can start a business, right? You can go buy another flip house. But being educated in kind of the financial part of it is
Yeah.
so important, right? Like, you have to know how to refinance a house. You have to know that you can actually go do that, right?
Yeah.
And like what Bryce is talking about is, he's getting into some of these properties, doing improvements, pulling money out of them by the equity he's creating by making the improvements. And then he's using that money to go get into another project or another deal, right? And I mean, we could go on and on about that. There's some technical stuff that's way over my head with that stuff, but being in tune financially and knowing some of these things, or knowing a person that you can lean on for that advice, it's so crucial.
Yeah. And it comes probably learning. I'm stubborn myself. Like learning the hard way is usually how I learn best.
Yeah.
Right. So like when you're saying that, like, yeah, if you get 180,000 out of a house that you bought 5 years ago, that's great. And you can roll it into something as long as you don't have, a bunch of debt.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
credit card debt is one of the ones that piles up big time.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so like, and I'm guilty of it. Like I've learned my lesson a few times,
Yeah.
where you let bills stack up on the credit card, I'll pay next month, moving money other places, and before you know it, you're paying like six, seven, $800, $1,000 in interest a month.
Yeah.
And then you're getting behind, like it's just going, and so, and there's been times where, yeah, we end up selling something and like, I got to pay down credit card debt,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but it's all about that financial budgeting, and really telling your money where to go. If you're going to charge, if a job you need to charge $20,000 worth of material to your credit cards, then make sure when you get paid from that job, pay that off. Yeah, you might pay a little bit more just letting it sit on there for a month or two till you get
Yep.
paid, but you need to allocate that money and move it where it goes.
100%.
If you just leave it, oh, savings checking, like, oh, well, where'd this come from, right? And then there's fuel expense, like a lot of stuff gets charged to cards.
100%.
And so, yeah, no, but rolling that money over is like huge when you can start snowballing that like it is. It's a snowball effect going, and it just grows.
Yeah.
If you can maintain, that movement with that money without needing to pull from it to do, personal stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. So, as we kind of wind things down, like, what's kind of the ideal customer for you, man? Like, if there's anybody out there listening in the valley, like, what kind of customer do you look for? Like, what's a good fit for you?
so my ideal customer, somebody wants quality work. I mean, our motto, I mean, is quality professionalism. And it's one of those things that I think that we want people that want quality work, because there's a lot of guys out there that can just show up and make something look good, or just show up and throw something together, but it's not done correctly. It's not, gonna last.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, we enjoy doing high end. We're really good at high end quality renovation work. Which is it's a niche, obviously.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
but nowadays it depends on the economy. Sometimes people are willing to spend money and do nice things. Sometimes people aren't. And so, we want those people that want good quality work. We want people that are willing to spend the money to allow us to do it, because quality takes time. And so, we can go in there. I can have you, throw you together a tile shower in, a couple days, and it might not be waterproofed underneath. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But if we go in there and do it right and we waterproof it, we use the correct materials, we do everything correctly, seal it. do it nicely. It might take a week, and labor is always the biggest cost in
Right.
any project.
Right.
And so, it's finding those people that are willing to pay for the quality work. We build everything kind of the way that I would build it at my house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we always tailor to the customer. If they want to use different materials or whatever, that's fine. Usually the rough materials, we will use what we use no matter
Right.
what. But finishes, we kind of deviate a little bit, and adjust the quality a little bit. We're gonna install them the same way.
Yeah.
But we want people that want quality work. Lately, I've been kind of targeting more commercial guys that have businesses. We want to build these red iron steel buildings for people that need the space,
Okay.
large square footages.
Yeah.
You know, commercial build outs, ag stuff. I mean, airplane hangars, storage units, like things like that is kind of where I'm starting to towards
Yeah.
that look down that avenue a little
Yeah.
bit further just because it's a niche. And in the valley, the valley, everybody and their brother. I'm tired of competing with people's uncles.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like my uncle can do that shower for half that. Okay, well, have him do it.
Have them do it. Yeah.
You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And
Yeah.
so there are people out there that want quality stuff still, but like, you know, I'm just tired of competing with Joe Blow. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
You're the pickup truck contractor is what
yep,
I call them.
yep, that are
Yeah.
here today, gone tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, we're kind of looking a little bit more commercial, and it's just kind of a shift that we've made due to, a few different things. But like, I think one of them being, I guess interior design. We used to have a really good interior designer that moved away. And, in order to offer that high end type stuff, I need a designer,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and we just kind of haven't been able to replace her since.
Yeah.
And so, we still do that stuff, and I still have some good gals in the office that are able to assist with that. But, my focus on these commercial type buildings is that, we can do quite a few of them. We can put them up. There's a little bit less room for error, so it kind of mitigates a little bit, potential error on the job as far
Yeah.
as having for me to pay to fix things,
Yeah.
depending on who's on the job. And so, affects a little bit of everything, but,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. We did that, that cabin renovation with you up
Yep.
there on Highway 410. That won
Mhm.
some home builders awards, right?
Yeah, yeah, I won a bunch of home builders
Yeah.
awards, as far as renovation work goes, and
That was top notch. Like everything about that project was just
thought out
was
and
thought
done.
out,
Yep.
and I mean it was nice. It was a real nice product.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that you can get when you're able to, when the client is willing to spend the money to sit down and plan it out.
Right.
Right? And so, that planning takes more time than anybody probably listening to this understands.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
and I could go into a whole hour of, estimation and what it takes to estimate as a general contractor.
Right. Right.
But we won't, but like the planning phase of just a single job can take 3-4 months.
Right.
You know what I mean? And especially these if you want quality work, you got to plan for it. Like, where's the heating system for the floors going to come in at? Where is, what are we doing for flooring? Where's this transition gonna adjust for flooring height? So you don't have
Yeah.
somebody to stub your toe on.
There's so many details that like the average homeowner doesn't even
No.
comprehend, right? And it's like to
Mm.
get that finished product that is just dialed in, there's so
Mhm.
much pre-planning that goes into it.
You have to figure everything out before you start building.
Yep.
Everything. It's not even just, oh, we'll figure that out later. Like, no, we have to plan every detail.
Absolutely.
And I have to have built this thing basically multiple times in order to, give you a price on it and then execute. So it's one of those things. It takes so much time to plan a high end project, and so that's where people wanting high end stuff and they just hire whatever. They run into problems because they show up, they're not ready, their subs are unorganized, like
Yeah.
scheduling's not
Yeah.
right, they don't have what they
Well,
need.
and so one of the things to touch on too is like how much value you bring when you bring in a team of good subs,
Yeah.
right? So like as a general contractor, it's customary that, we're getting you numbers, you're
Mhm.
marking our number up slightly
Mhm.
as a service, right? Because it's our relationship, it's your relationship with the plumber, the HVAC guy,
Yep.
but you have a team of people that you trust, that you
Mm.
work with, right? And you bring this team into these projects,
Yeah.
and there's so much value there, right?
Oh,
Versus having the homeowner bring his guy in, I mean, it's just, it turns into such a shit show,
Yeah.
right? You know, versus when you're working with the same team and everybody's on the same page,
Yeah.
and then it just makes for a fluid project.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, another thing, I guess, thinking about setting up businesses, yeah, you got to build those relationships.
Yeah,
I mean, if you don't have those relationships, like you were saying, I mean, it's gonna be a nightmare. You're gonna have a headache of a time, and you want quality people, and you want businesses that are established because they're able to show up when you need them.
absolutely. Yeah,
It's not like you haven't if you're and there's nothing wrong with one man shows, but like for me, where I'm at, like I want few guys because not always, if something comes up and I need somebody out there, they can usually break somebody off and send them out.
right.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so, those relationships are almost invaluable once you build them with different subcontractors,
yeah,
different people in the trades.
absolutely.
I'm willing to pay more for those relationships
Yeah,
because my clients get the best quality. And that at the end of the day, that's what I want. I want the experience to be a good experience for the clients, low stress, and to have professional people in their houses.
right. Yeah,
Especially on well, anybody's house, but the high-end remodel stuff, high-end renovation work or new construction, you can't just have anybody in there.
absolutely.
And it's gonna save me a ton of headache having to tell these guys what to do and figure out their job versus a professional subcontractor that's going to show up, line their guys out, and have it figured out and done. I don't
Yeah,
have to worry about it.
right.
And so I don't know if you can put a value on that. So
Absolutely.
it's one of those.
Yeah.
It's a big thing, just one little aspect, but huge in owning a company.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, it's been a great conversation. A lot of good information here, especially on the business side of things for the guys that might be thinking about kind of taking that plunge.
Hmm.
But yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
All right, guys. Bryce Takamori, Graphite Construction.